I never wanted kids. I never wanted to get married. I thought I was going to be a career woman, and that was it. This is certainly not the first time Ayesha Curry has spoken candidly about her NBA star husband on live TV. However, this time, she has taken it a step further, and according to rumors, she is allegedly calling it quits. Let's break it all down. The unexpected beginning. It started as a podcast appearance. Just another celebrity sit down. Ayesha Curry, the wife of NBA superstar Steph Curry, joined Alex Cooper on Call Her Daddy for what was supposed to be an honest, reflective conversation about identity, marriage, and motherhood. But within hours, that honesty would ignite one of the biggest celebrity backlashes of the year. The internet, always ready for outrage, devoured it. What exactly did she say? And how did the woman once celebrated as America's most wholesome basketball wife suddenly become the villain in her own love story? What happens when a life you meticulously plan for yourself takes a completely different turn? When the career-driven dreams you've harbored since childhood suddenly collide with an unexpected reality? For Ayesha Curry, this question became her lived experience in ways she never anticipated. In August 2025, Ayesha sat down for what would become one of her most revealing interviews to date. What she shared with host Alex Cooper wasn't just another celebrity fluff piece. It was a raw, unfiltered glimpse into the complexities of young marriage, unexpected motherhood, and the struggle to maintain one's identity when life doesn't follow the script you wrote for yourself. At first, it didn't even sound controversial. Nervously laughing in the opening moments, Ayesha joked, "Hoping I don't get in trouble for things that I say." She said it playfully, unaware that within 24 hours, those things would be fueling thousands of think pieces, memes, and comment wars. A few minutes later came the line that would be taken completely out of context, a confession that millions heard but very few understood. "So, I didn't want kids. I didn't want to get married. I thought I was going to be a career girl. And that's it." Those 14 words, plucked from a much longer conversation, became the internet's proof that Ayesha regretted her marriage, that she was tired of Steph, and that divorce was imminent. Except, that's not what she said. Not even close. The full interview showed her reflecting on how love and circumstance had transformed her life. She explained that before meeting Steph, she was focused on her career, but after falling in love, her plans shifted unexpectedly. Those words might shock people who see Ayesha today, a mother of 4, successful entrepreneur, and seemingly the perfect NBA wife. But they represent a truth that many young women can relate to. Sometimes the person we become is nothing like the person we plan to be. And that transformation isn't always easy, pretty, or without its challenges. Ayesha's formative years. Ayesha Curry was born in Markham, Ontario, Canada. From the age of 3, she was already working in the entertainment industry. While other kids were playing soccer or doing typical after-school activities, young Ayesha was on sets doing commercials, print work, and television appearances. As she explained on a podcast, acting wasn't just a hobby. It was her identity, the only thing she thought she could do and what she believed would define her future. At 14, everything changed when her family moved from Canada to North Carolina. It was there, in a church youth group, that she first encountered a certain cute boy that all the girls were obsessed with, Steph Curry. But this wasn't an instant love story. In fact, he was one of the first people that I met in the States. But we were just friends. Obviously, we were 14, right? The relationship at that point was purely platonic. Ayesha had bigger things on her mind than teenage crushes. She was focused, driven, and determined to make it in Hollywood. After graduating high school a year early, she packed her bags and headed to Los Angeles to pursue her acting career. Her parents, who had raised her in what she describes as a very strict environment, surprisingly gave her their blessing to chase her dreams in L.A. at just 17 years old. Life in Los Angeles was everything Ayesha had dreamed of and nothing like she expected. Her father set her up in an apartment for a month, but the reality of L.A.'s cost of living hit hard. She found herself working 3 jobs, at a frozen yogurt shop, Abercrombie & Fitch, and at farmers markets on weekends, just to make ends meet while pursuing auditions. But it was during this period of hustle and struggle that something unexpected happened. Steph Curry reached out to her on Facebook. He was in town for a basketball camp and wanted to meet up. That first reconnection that casual hangout on Hollywood Boulevard, which set in motion a chain of events that would completely redirect the course of Ayesha's life. It was one of the best days of my life. Honestly, it was so innocent and young, and I wish I could relive that. The sweetness of their early dating period stands in stark contrast to the complexities that would come later. They did touristy things, walked Hollywood Boulevard, put their hands in cement at the Chinese theater, grabbed chai lattes, and strolled through the Grove. It was, as Ayesha describes, real young love. Neither of them had any idea what the future held. Neither could have predicted the massive success Stephen would achieve, or how that success would reshape both their lives. And here's something crucial to understand about their early relationship. Ayesha genuinely didn't know Stephen was going to become a basketball superstar. This wasn't a woman chasing an NBA player. I didn't know that he was going to end up playing basketball. He said he wanted to be a high school basketball coach. This is a critical detail that often gets lost. Ayesha fell for Stephen the person, not Stephen the potential NBA star. She came from an arch-driven family where, as she put it, sports outside of Doug Flutie playing for the Buffalo Bills just wasn't a thing in my house. She literally thought she was going to be the one with the big career while Stephen coached high school basketball. But life, as they say, had other plans, a rapidly changing reality. After some back-and-forth long-distance dating, while Stephen finished his final year of college, everything accelerated. They got engaged in July 2010 and married on July 30th, 2011, when Ayesha was just 22 years old. This is where things get interesting. When we think about marriage at 22, we often think of people who grew up dreaming of wedding dresses and white picket fences. But remember, this was the same Ayesha who never wanted to get married, never dreamed about weddings, and was supposed to be that career girl conquering Hollywood. So what changed? I just knew that I loved him, and I'd never experienced anything else. I'd never felt any differently than, this is who I want to spend the rest of my life with. It's a beautiful sentiment, highlighting how we can surprise ourselves with what we truly want versus what we thought we wanted. But here's what Ayesha also candidly admits, and I say this all the time to our family. I'm like, you guys 22? I'm like, not a single parent. Nobody was like, hey guys, are you sure? Everyone around them was supportive, encouraging them to dive in, and they did. At 22 years old with limited life experience, Ayesha married a man she loved and prepared to embark on what she thought would be an exciting journey together. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was just how quickly and dramatically her life was about to change in ways she never signed up for. Because here's the bombshell. Just 3 months after getting married, Ayesha found out she was pregnant. Why are you confused? Because, Alex, my OB said it could take up to a year. And so in my head I heard, at least a year. I was thinking we were going to be bar hopping. And then it was like, nope, you're pregnant. And you're going to be very, very sick. Think about that for a moment. Ayesha had just gotten married at 22. She was still the young woman who, just months earlier, had been working 3 jobs in LA trying to pursue her acting dreams. She had never wanted kids, never wanted to get married, and thought she was going to be a career woman. Now, 3 months into marriage, she was facing an unexpected pregnancy and severe morning sickness. As she later reflected, it was not on my bingo card. This is where Ayesha's story becomes not just her own, but a story that resonates with countless women who find themselves in similar situations, facing reality completely different from what they imagined, trying to reconcile who they thought they'd be with who they're becoming. What happens to a young woman's sense of self when everything she planned for suddenly disappears? When the career she was working toward becomes impossible to pursue? When the independence she valued so highly transforms into dependence and partnership in ways she never anticipated? These are the questions that would haunt Ayesha in the early years of her marriage. And as Stephen's career exploded into superstardom, those questions would only become more complicated, pressing, and difficult to navigate. The identity crisis. After her daughter, Riley, was born in 2012, Ayesha Curry found herself in a position that millions of women know all too well. She was a mother, but she was also still herself. Or, at least, she was trying to figure out who herself was anymore. The transformation wasn't immediate. For that first year, she was caught up in the whirlwind of new motherhood. The sleepless nights, the feeding schedules, the complete restructuring of life around a tiny human who needed her constantly. But then, something shifted. After my daughter turned 1, I remember there being a shift and being like, I have goals for myself. This doesn't feel right. I love being a mom, but I love doing other things too, and I need to get my stuff together and figure out what that looks like for myself. This moment of recognition, this awareness that motherhood, as wonderful as it was, wasn't enough to fulfill her entirely, is something women often feel but are afraid to say out loud. There's a societal pressure that once you become a mother, that should be enough. You should be content, grateful, and not want more. But Ayesha wanted more. And critically, she needed to figure out what more even meant anymore. The acting career she had spent her entire life working toward was no longer feasible. The woman who had been working since age 3, who had moved to LA at 17 with big dreams, that version of herself seemed like a distant memory. The struggle with identity became even more complex as Stephen's career trajectory skyrocketed. Remember, when they got married, Ayesha genuinely thought Stephen would be a high school basketball coach. She expected to be the one with the big career, but instead, her husband was becoming one of the greatest basketball players of all time, revolutionizing the game, earning massive contracts, and achieving global fame. And what was Ayesha? She was his wife, the mother of his children, the woman standing beside him at events, watching from the stands at games, managing the household while he traveled for work. I think my identity, because I have such an entrepreneurial spirit, not being able to call the shots all the time for myself was freaking weird. It's a deceptively simple statement that reveals so much. Here was a woman who had been working, making her own money, and making her own decisions since childhood. Now, suddenly, her life was defined by someone else's career, schedule, and success. Even decisions about her own life, where they lived, when they could travel, how they structured their days, revolve around Stephen's basketball career. This isn't to say Stephen was controlling, or that Ayesha didn't have agency. But there's a fundamental truth about being married to someone with an all-consuming career. That career affects everyone in the family, whether they sign up for it or not. And Ayesha definitely didn't sign up for it. The scrutiny and the struggle, the loss of her career identity, was only part of the challenge. There was also the public scrutiny, the invasion of privacy, and the constant attention, and not all of it was positive. Ayesha describes one particularly disturbing incident that happened when Riley was still a baby. I remember one time, right after my first was born, she was whiny, so I was like, let me just nurse her in the back seat. And Stephen was putting a bike or something in the trunk, and this woman opens a car door and sticks her head in, and she's like, I just want to see the baby. Imagine that. You're a new mother trying to feed your baby in what you thought was the privacy of your own car, and a stranger invades your space. When Ayesha expressed her shock, the woman's response was chilling. Oh, honey, you know what you signed up for. But here's the thing. Ayesha didn't know what she signed up for. How could she? She married a guy she thought was going to be a high school basketball coach. She fell in love with a person, not a brand or a global icon. Now she was being told that her privacy, her boundaries, and her right to feel safe were forfeit because of who her husband became. And I was just crying because I was postpartum. I was just bawling my eyes out, and I'm like, what? Is this what it's going to be like? The scrutiny extended beyond invasive fans. Social media became a breeding ground for opinions about Ayesha's appearance, her choices, and her every move. It was so depressing. And also, it was during that time when the social media thing was just ramping up, and so people were going wild and just spewing opinions on things that didn't warrant opinions. One particularly hurtful comparison that circulated online was that Ayesha looked like SpongeBob's mom. She laughs about it now, acknowledging she did have a rounder face at times. But imagine being a young mother already struggling with postpartum body image and having thousands of people online mocking your appearance. Then there were the comments about her role as Stephen's wife. One reporter told her on live television that she needed to sit there and look pretty. Think about the implication. A woman who had been working professionally since age 3, who had dreams and ambitions, was reduced to decorative accompaniment to her husband's success, forging a new path, The professional challenges were equally frustrating. When Ayesha tried to break into the food and business world at age 24 or 25, she faced significant barriers.